Hey guys and girls, if you're here, then you know what's up. This is part 5 of our ultimate Tiermaker challenge, the seemingly never-ending Tiermaker challenge. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in, and without further ado, let's pick up where we left off last time. All right, and like we always do, let's take a quick recap of who charted last time, and that is none other than Unearth with a sobering yet honest and factual D-tier rating. So let's move on to the first band of the day. And that is none other than Unto Others. And guys, I've never heard of them before today. So they are running straight into No Context. And guys, I know I say it in every video. If anyone has any sort of information on these bands I know nothing about, please comment them below. My goal is, at the end of all of this, to eliminate the No Context box and place all these bands on the map according to their factual significance. And guys, even if you don't have any facts about the band, but you feel a certain way about them, love them or hate them, comment that down below too. Join the discussion. I love it when you guys comment on my stuff, and please continue to support these videos. Thank you so much. All right, so we're moving on to the next band of the day, and that is Waytain, and I hope I'm saying that right. This is black metal from Sweden, formed in the late 90s, I think around 1997 to be exact. And when you talk about black metal and being extreme and being cult and just visualizing the themes that belong in classic black metal, there's not one band that's living it harder and more realistically than Waytain. You hear about these guys from time to time, and when I mean extreme, they take the anti-Christian and satanic overtures that are common for black metal, and they put it in a visual experience. That being said, they bring dead animal carcasses to their shows. There's blood. There's satanic rituals. I mean, that's heavy stuff. And even the band members themselves believe that they are evil and dangerous, according to one of the many of the articles that I've read a while back trying to research them. They believe they are living evil and dangerous. That being said, I can't imagine the funk at one of their shows. Can you imagine a truck just... or a bus handling dead carcasses and then just moshing, sweating through all of that? That's probably a very unpleasant experience. I could be wrong. Anyhow, that being said, these guys are as cult as it gets. They are a consistent band, always have been a consistent band, and generally the reviews from critics and fans alike are pretty much always positive. That being said, their influence pretty much has hit a brick wall. They're not as known or as influential as the other titans of the genre, and I think a lot of that has to do with their stage show. They can't really bring that type of show everywhere. So when you can't communicate like that overseas and come to America or other countries because you're doing such extreme things, that limits the influence of your music. And that's why, if you look at their listeners from Spotify and Last.fm, stuff like that, those numbers are kind of low. But the pouring of support from those numbers is generally great. They're not revolutionary by any means. I think they've done something incredibly different and unique with their stage appearance and what they do. But as far as their body of work, I feel like they're deserving of a D-tier band. They're unique. I'll give them that. They're original, but it's locally significant. And for that, I'm going to put them at a D-tier ranking. This is something of an unsung hero sort of deal. All right. And this is killing me, guys. You would think after we classify so many bands that some of these logos would be easier to read, and that's Wilder Run? Well, it's going to Wilder Run straight into No Context, because I've never heard of these guys before. And Witherfall is going to fall in right behind him in No Context. Guys, I really think before long this box is going to be bigger than S tier. Because, good Lord. Alright, so I do not know why there's 2 logos for Wheel. When I went to research this band, there's only one band that shows up, at least for me. And that's an American melodic heavy metal band, traditional heavy metal band, that formed around 1982, 1983. And they flew straight under the radar in a very indie sort of way, and they never really gained any sort of climate into mainstream. Nobody's ever really heard of them. Not a lot is known about the band as far as history or anything like that. Their works are largely inaccessible, and from what I understand, they haven't been a thing in quite a long time. This band just never got any love, never got any support, and they got snowed by all the prevailing heavy metal acts at the time. That being said, both of these wheels are going to wheel into an F tier for those reasons. I'm not saying they're a bad band. They were just honestly one of the many bands that never got a chance. And guys, if there's a second wheel band, please let me know. I don't understand why there's two of them on here. It could be a mistake, or it could be there's another obscure band with the same name. Ibaraki. This is the side project of Matthew Heafy from Trivium. And honestly, there's not a lot going on with this band because it is, again, a side project for when he's not busy, fronting one of the most influential and amazing bands, of the current day. Really, I don't think there's any releases or anything like it. I think it's just something that he does for fun when he can, and for that, it gets an F. Nothing wrong with it, but I don't think it was meant to be revolutionary or groundbreaking. It was just jamming with friends for fun. I mean, you can do that, and if something cool comes out of it, then great. That being said, there's not a lot of significance, not a lot of work, not a lot of anything really. Again, but you're dealing with Matt Heafy, who is fronting one of the most successful bands of all time. You can't expect there to be another project to take the same kind of precedence. There's just not enough time for that. All right, so the next band is a band that I've only recently heard of. It's Zentrix. I want to say they're a modern thrash band out of the UK. These guys are just getting their start, I think, if I recall correctly. Honestly, there's not a lot of work out by them, I don't believe, or anything that's accessible that I can recall. These guys are very widely and well received in the UK as well as overseas. Their pull here in America is just not there yet. I feel like these guys are going to be a band on the rise with, continued work and repertoire. But that being said, there's just a lot that people don't know about them. There's not a lot of accessibility, especially here in the States, for their music. And for that, they're getting an F tier rating. I'm not saying they're bad at all. I'm just saying right now, the climate of music is changing. And honestly, right now, they're just not getting the love and support they need to be globally significant. But from all that I've read, people have said that, one, they're not revolutionary, but two, what they're putting out is great music. It just needs a push. All right. Zeal and Ardor. That is way too classy for a metal band name. But these guys, you do hear about them at times. You do hear about them at least me, semi-frequently. And these guys are really, really weird. This is a Swiss metal project. Basically, they take metal and then they combine their cultural influences. There's a lot of gospel and blues and jazz and a lot of things that are honestly polarizing to metal in there. Not so much blues and jazz, but that gospel is the one thing that keeps getting pointed out. And honestly, for that, they get lumped into that avant-garde sort of weird metal. I don't even know what avant-garde means, really. It's just another subgenre of metal. But they kind of don't like that title, and their fans don't like putting them there either. They are doing something that's completely unique and no one else is doing. I don't know how I feel about gospel with metal, but I mean, I ain't going to knock it until I try it. That being said, their audience is small. Now, from what I understand, there's also not a consistent set of reviews for this band either. Those that like them really like them. People that have never heard of them before get involved in their music and are pleasantly surprised. And then there's the others that just don't understand it and just can't get behind it due to the sonic differences in the music. And I guess it's kind of clashing at times. I don't know. But there's not straight good or bad from critics and fans alike. It's just very mixed in general. Their numbers on Spotify and Last.fm are kind of on the smaller side. I think we're hearing about them more because of what they're doing with music. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. But, that's why we're hearing about them and not a lot because of their body of work. And for that, Zeal and Ardor gets an F tier rating because they're not really big. They're actually more underground than I thought they were. I thought they were a bigger band, honestly, as much as I've heard about them in the past couple years. But I feel like in time, I think they'll gain a little more steam. But right now their music is not consistently good in the eyes of the fans and the critics. They're not consistently accepted either, which that's what metal's all about anyways. But general consensus is they're just plain weird. And it seems like they're locally significant. Well, this isn't locally significant at all. This is 1349. For those of you that don't know, that's the year the Black Death hit Norway. So this is one of the oldest black metal bands to emerge from Norway. I think they're from the early 90s. From what I've read and researched, these guys are not revolutionary. They kind of got snowed by the bigger names that we've already discussed. You know, the Burzums, the Mayhems, the Emperors, all that good stuff. That came out around the same time that kind of dominated that market. But they are probably one of the most consistent bands of the genre, continually putting out music that's good from fans and critics alike. You don't really hear much hate about this band in the slightest. They're just basically a true black metal band that puts out consistently great music. I mean, they're not revolutionary. They're not extremely influential. They are an important band to the movement. And for that, I give them a D tier rating. While they're not revolutionary and super influential, you got to really put your faith in the bands that you can trust. And this is one of those trusted band situations that you know whenever a record comes out and a song comes out that it's going to be good. It's what you expect. Not saying they're releasing the same album every time, but you just know you're going to get a good album and straight music like you like it. You know, I mean, you got to love those bands. They're not going to let you down. They're important. All right, so I really hate talking about this next band. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. It's just one of those nail biters when you have to grade a certain band. This band is from the Creole Cajun French Quarter. They're from Louisiana. And if you didn't know, fun fact, this is Sammy Duet's pre-Goat Whore band. And for those of you that know, Sammy Duet's a household name. He's a huge figure in metal. Has a very killer ESP signature guitar for all my guitar playing friends out there. I wonder if Goat Whore is going to be on the list somewhere later on. It looks like the list is just reset. We're back at A again. This must be the updated portion. Now, these guys have not been a thing for a very long time. I think they formed in like 1991 and then disbanded in like 97, released a couple albums. They were only marginally, they're very underground, honestly. They were very underground in the 90s, only marginally significant. The reason that they're being heard about now, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know about Acid Bath, didn't start hearing about them until like last year, or maybe the year before. I thought they were a newer band, but no. It is their legacy that's starting to become rediscovered. I mentioned in previous videos something of a resurgence and rebirth of sludge, doom, and stoner music in the recent times. And I think that's what's happening. People are rediscovering that body of work. Now, Acid Bath wasn't necessarily doom metal, but a lot of your younger doom bands are looking to them for inspiration. It's a lot of sludge and a lot of stoner metal music. According to the research that I found, that the releases they made throughout the 90s were considered some of the most important releases to that sludge and stoner subgenre. That being said, they were only marginally significant. And then there was a time where everybody went to sleep on them because they broke up. And if it wasn't for the modern revolution for stoner and doom, I don't think you'd be hearing about them as much. But since people are rediscovering their body of work and finding influence, and they're starting a whole nother revolution of sludge metal that has to be spoken for. So I'm going to give Acid Bath a very painful D tier rating. So let me explain this to you. So let me explain the rating to you. The reason why they got a D tier rating and not anything higher is because, one, they didn't create the sludge metal or stoner metal movement. That's already been a thing. And two, everybody went to sleep on these guys until just recently because of the massive resurgence. Now, there's respect for the rediscovering of their body of work, but in the long run, they were never prolific and they were never widely respected and received. They were only locally significant. I think maybe in time, their significance, if this trend continues, their significance will grow. But to be fair with their entire career and their entire body of work, I feel like D is fair. I don't think you can give them any less than a D for their contributions historically, but that's it. Moving on. All right. Alcest. Now, this is a band that I have not heard about in quite some time. This is a French black metal band. I first heard of them between 2009 and 2011, that couple year period. They were starting to get a bit of a cult following here in the United States. People were talking about them, sharing their music. That's when I heard about them. And then after that, post 2011, when the musical landscape changed again, you just didn't hear about them anymore. And I still haven't really heard anything about them since. However, their music is widely regarded as some really good stuff from fans and critics alike. They're actually still a thing. I didn't know that. They're continually putting out consistent records, and they're consistently considered a very good band. However, critics and fans alike herald their first 3 records as their best, and everything after that just hasn't kind of lived up to it. But for France, they were huge. They did get some media fanfare here in America, but they didn't have lasting significance, and that kind of impacts the score here. They're a consistent and respected band. They're just not widely relevant. They're not widely influential, so they are a respected D-tier band. Okay. Archspire. 1, I love the name. And 2, I've been hearing a lot about these guys lately. I don't know about you guys, but you're hearing a lot about this band. They're a newer band. I think they're that technical deathcore band. I think they're from Pennsylvania, somewhere around there. Pennsylvania seems to be putting out a lot of great metalcore or deathcore. And they're honestly following the new guitar revolution. Dean Lamb, the lead guitarist for Archspire, is widely now heralded as one of the hottest new guitarists on the metal scene. These guys are making a lot of waves, and they're starting to gain popularity. That being said, they're a new band. Are they revolutionary? I don't think they are just yet. I think it's too soon. But they're getting a lot of support. They're becoming massively relevant. They're not massively relevant yet, but they're getting there. They're that pinnacle of band on the rise. I do feel like in time that they're going to be a top-tier band probably within a year or two. These guys are taking the world by storm, and for that, they get a very, very good D-tier rating. They're like D++. They haven't been around long enough yet or gained enough momentum for that C tier, but they're headed there. I put them next to Unleash the Archers for the same reason. The same thing is happening with those guys. They're starting to get bigger shows, more press. Nam Show did a feature with them this year. Him and the other guitar player. And people are just honestly starting to focus on them a lot. I feel like in a year or two, they're going to be on top of the world. They're already gaining a groundstorm of support, and that's hugely important. They're contributing to not death metal, but deathcore in a very unique way. This is a band to watch. These guys are going to be on fire in a year or so. Okay. Agalock. I might be making some people mad with this. I don't know. It doesn't seem like anybody really cares about Agalock anymore. I heard about them in the same time frame that I heard about Alcest, 2009 to 2011, somewhere in that period. And then I stopped hearing about them within the same period too. These guys are, a lot of people don't really know what to put these guys in because they're such a, I guess, inclusive or weird subgenre of music. There's atmospheric, I think symphonic, progressive, and there's some black metal influences, and there's some other stuff. They tossed them in with that avant-garde, really, I don't even know what that means. But people like to list them as avant-garde metal. A lot of people said that their first couple releases, the only thing I remember about their releases is there was like a moose or an elk or a deer or something on one of their albums, and I really didn't think that that was very metal. I don't know what the animal means. Their logo looks black metal AF, I will say that. And speaking of that, they are sometimes regarded as pioneers of post-black metal / black gaze. Who comes up with these names? Honestly, I never hear anybody talk about those two subgenres either. It seems like they faded away. I think they also disbanded. as quickly as they came on scene, there was not a really big ripple from them. It was just like they were there for a moment and gone. And for that reason, they get an F. I know people might get mad because of those subgenres that they were quoted for pioneering, but let me ask you an honest question. When was the last time someone told you they were listening to black gaze? Or they were getting into post-black metal? You don't ever hear about them. So they're not even marginally or in a cult way relevant. So, I mean, they may have pioneered it, but no one really is flying the flag for those subgenres. It seems like their importance was minimal. The relevance was only short-lived and locally significant. It seems like, again, they were there and then they weren't. And then nobody really knew what to do with their music or how to classify them. They weren't around long enough to be significant. So, Agalock is a painful F. Ahab. I really don't know. I've never heard of this band. So No Context starts to grow a little bit. And here we are with another illegible. What? Aclis? That hurts to say. So we're going to lump this guy straight into No Context. Acrecock. Sounds like whoever has acrecock needs to go to a doctor. You get that checked out. Doesn't sound good. Now, that being said, and jokes aside, I don't know anything about this band. So they're going straight into No Context. This No Context bracket is growing by the video. Like, Lord, I think it's almost doubled in size. So guys, any sort of information, good, bad, or ugly, please let me know about it. Hopefully there's some factual information on them, because there's no way to research all these different and obscure bands, or at least obscure to me bands. Alien Weaponry. I love the logo. I love the name. I just never heard of them before. Hopefully there are some Alien Weaponry fans out here that can help shed some light on what they are and who they are and potentially where they belong. Or if you love or hate them, let me know. Alright, so this next band needs no introduction. This is Amorphous. You want to talk about the Finnish folk metal revolution. It doesn't get any bigger, any more significant, any more influential than Amorphous. They are still titans of the genre, widely respected, pioneers of folk metal. You know, they included a lot of symphonic, atmospheric, and black metal influences, as well as a lot of really melodic stuff. I used to listen to Amorphous back in the day and thought they were absolutely amazing. But when you look and research this band, there's nothing short of legendary status for them. A lot of bands in that folk metal, that Finnish folk metal tier of music wouldn't have existed if Amorphous hadn't have paved the way. These guys are true innovators and absolute legends. And for that, they get a well-deserved S tier ranking. Honestly, guys, this is the first S I've done in a little while. Revocation was the last S. But that being said, I feel like I need to review the other folk metal bands that are out there. I think Alluviated can stay. I feel like Teresa's might go down to an A. I'm not saying that they're bad, but are they on the same level as revolutionary bands such as Amorphous? Are they on the same level as Alluviated? No, they're not. So I feel like while they are heavily influential and wildly important, I feel like they belong as a well-respected A tier. Along with I'm going to put Corpaclani in with the B tier, and then Ensiferum and Fintrol as a C. Because you got to think, not everybody can get an S, and not everybody can get an A. And when you look at the revolutionary chart of who created these genres, who pioneered the genres, who is the most influential of these subunits of metal, you cannot put all these bands in the same tier. So it only goes into the order of importance as far as influence. And if Alluviated and Amorphous hadn't done what they did, a lot of those other Finnish bands would not be here today. They didn't have a path to follow. So Amorphous is like the godfather of that whole thing. And they're still widely respected, revered, and legendary. And you cannot knock them from that status for their unique and influential contributions to music. So easy S tier for Amorphous. All right, let's continue. And coming down from the very valiant S tier rating, going to Amorphous is a logo I cannot read yet again. This is Anal Nathrach. Probably black metal, but I really don't know. I've heard the name. I just don't know anything about them, which is why they get a no context. Again, this list is growing, and any kind of help or support I can get with any of these bands, please let me know. All right, and the next is a very well-known band. We are talking about Canada's pride and joy, Annihilator. We're talking about late 80s, early 90s, coming into some form of prominence, thrash metal band. Jeff Waters being an incredibly hardworking musical mastermind, Canadian thrash. They definitely went further than Voivod. Not to talk them down, because I do like Voivod. Those guys are just so nice. But Jeff Waters is probably one of the hardest working musicians in, metal music. He's had a plethora of great talent come and go through his band. I will say his vocals are a bit of an acquired taste, but they're not the worst I've ever heard. That being said, they do share a similar fate as to Voivod, in the fact that they never did seal a consistent audience in the United States. I mean, late 80s, early 90s, Alice in Hell. And I think there was another album around that time that was actually kind of prominent for them. Then after that, the mid-90s came around, grunge killed everything, and they went straight underground. These guys were just still staying true to themselves. That's the one thing that I will go to bat for Jeff Waters and Annihilator, and that is the fact that he has been true to himself, been true to the Annihilator style, and carries on against, whatever may come his way, whatever difficulties. The man does have a massive following overseas. America is kind of the weak point here. You don't hear much about Annihilator anymore. Are they a legendary band? Yes, of course they are. Its local significance and honestly availability and accessibility. Their fans are incredibly loyal. I've heard a few of their songs, and I didn't think it was necessarily bad. Honestly, I felt like some of the other work should have really been higher tier than it was. But a lot of bands just don't get the support and love they need. Annihilator being one of them. No disrespect to Jeff Waters. He is a titan, a great guy, a very talented musician. Again, works his ass off. But that being said, even in the 2009 to 2014 rebirth, regeneration of love for old school bands, when they all started coming back, they didn't really even get much of a tick out of that. They just continued underground, just marching away like they always have. Now, placing them is going to be painful no matter what I do. Do I feel they are F tier? Well, part of me says yes, and part of me says not really. This is just one of those hard ones for me that no matter what I do, it doesn't feel exactly right. I don't feel like they're necessarily deserving of an F tier rating because of their legacy, because of everything that they've done for metal. You do hear about them more than, again, I'm not trying to talk down Voivod, but you do hear about them a bit more. They made it to a better place. That being said, they're still an underground band. So I will give them a D tier rating. They weren't revolutionary, they just weren't loved, not like they should have been, and that's the hard thing. When I put them on the same level as Voivod, no. Even though Voivod's been around longer, they just never hit the same sort of heights. Even though their heights never really lasted. Talking about Annihilator, they are more of a household name than some of the other bands on this list. And I mean, his legacy speaks for itself. I don't really think it's fair to give him anything less than a D. However, that being said, because of his legacy not being consistent, I'll say he's at the bottom. They're at the bottom of the D tier. All right. This is Archgore, and I have never heard of them, so they're going straight into no context. All right, this is absolutely illegible. Azagrum. Azagrum? I don't know, you tell me. These guys are no context because I honestly have never heard of them and can't even pronounce their name. Alright, so the next is Asphyx. This might ruffle a few tail feathers. This is an old school death metal, extreme metal band from the Netherlands. They're a Dutch band. Honestly, these guys just never got any love. When you look at their listener pool on Spotify, Last.fm, those numbers are fairly small. Their Facebook social medias are fairly, also small. There's not a giant audience for them. Not saying they're bad. They're not extremely revolutionary by any means. But, from the fans that have, listened to the music and critics alike, they are consistent. But it's just not enough support. They never really made a ripple. Despite their long-standing career, I have to give Asphyx an F tier rating just because they never really solidified an audience. Not a consistent audience here or around the world. They just fell under the radar without a lot of support. So, an unfortunate F tier for Asphyx. Atheist. This goes without real discussion that they're one of the greatest progressive technical death metal bands to ever come out of Florida. They came out in the same wave when death was coming into popularity. You had Cynic, you had Atheist, and you had Death. Those were like the big three. And honestly, guys, if I hadn't done the research, I wouldn't have known they weren't active today because of how much they are still incredibly relevant today. The newer technical death metal bands are still looking back to their body of work. I think Atheist came together around 91, or that's when their first album came out. Either one, and then they disbanded around 1997, 1998, something like that. And all their albums really seem to be very seminal to death metal. They're highly regarded as one of the best in class. Their body of work extends their legacy, honestly, because these guys have not been together for quite a long time. And for a band's body of work to pretty much exceed their existence and to influence future generations, these guys are absolute legends. They can't be knocked, but ranking them is going to be kind of hard. This is another one of those like Annihilator situations, which is going to make me unhappy no matter what I do. But you got to think, are they on the same tier as Death, influence-wise? You can't put them there. Death reigns supreme on that one. You put them against Cynic. Cynic is still a bit more relevant than that. But these guys are definitely deserving of an A tier ranking. And I'm going to put them right at the top. These guys are without a doubt the definition of A++. If they were active for a longer period of time, I feel like they probably would have been in that coveted S period, the S tier ranking. That being said, these guys are largely influential. Their body of work still being rediscovered to this day. If it wasn't for them, the modern face of technical death metal or death metal in general in America would not be the same. It took all three of those bands to revolutionize what's considered modern American death metal. You can't give them any less than an A. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be fair or even slightly right. Okay. All right, next band is Atrocity. I love the logo because I can actually read it, but I've never heard of them. They're going straight into no context. All right, Arion. This is another difficult one. This is a musical project for Finnish or Swedish, I don't remember where he's from, musician Arjen Lucassen, I'm chewing on my words today. And, his actual career as an individual, it speaks for itself. It extends his personality and his body of work. Arjen is a widely respected musician, producer in Scandinavia and Europe, all over the place. Highly influential character there. However, you hear about Arion and then you don't. You hear about Arion and it's amazing. But then again, you hear about Arion and it's crap. There's just never been a consistent body of work or a consistent, opinion overall from, both the fans and the, critics alike that actually dive into this sort of work. It's folk metal, it's power metal, it's symphonic, it's progressive, it's a lot of things. But one thing that it isn't is consistent. And I feel like that kills his influence, especially here in America. You don't hear about him much anymore. And if you do, it's not all positive either. It's more of, what's this? At least in my circles, that's more of what I'm seeing. The fans are hoping that he'll put out another really great Arion album, but there's a lot of doubt behind that. There's not really this is just a musical project for him to kind of make music without boundaries, which is honestly incredible. That's what I like to do whenever I'm inspired to make music, which I'm trying to get back into that, by the way. You want to create music without boundaries. You want to be able to do everything under your own umbrella, and this is the way he did it. And it was actually quite smart. Again, he's a celebrated guitarist, musician, and composer. But, there was never really a solid lineup for Arion. A lot of people came and went. There wasn't a particularly solid band in that formation, and the material also reflected that inconsistency. Not saying it should have been one complete band, because you can have other musicians come and go and still have great music. It's about inspiration and who you have playing on your records. But I think that a lot of the inconsistency kind of played off in the material, and there were never really consistently good albums. It was a good album, a great album, and some bad ones in between, and then there was some hiatuses or some lack of activity from them, and ultimately I feel like that limits his influence. But because he is an important character, you do hear about him a lot. You do hear about Arion a lot. And because there's so many fans here, especially in America, that want that groundbreaking Arion record, I feel like that speaks for, a lot about their music. I feel like they are underloved, not really consistent, and not extremely accessible. So they are deserving of a D tier ranking. I feel like that's fair. If they were more consistent and, consistently put out, positive, really great music, that would have really changed this whole thing, because consistency and quality really goes for a lot. Now, I finally found Voivod. And since Annihilator is in D tier, I'm going to have to lower these guys to an F, because they just don't have the same standing. And while that kills me to do that, I told you guys this list is going to change as I continue to go through it. I would love to keep Annihilator and Voivod on the same tier, but it's just not factually accurate. Voivod struggles a lot more to gain a consistent audience here in the States than Annihilator does. Annihilator is more established, more of a household name. I hate doing this to Voivod, but they are an F. And as for Arion, they're a D. A respected D. Because there is a lot of respect for Arjen Lucassen and, his music and his abilities. Nobody doubts his capabilities. It's just when your fans doubt how good your next release is going to be, you've lost a lot of faith. So he's a D. Bell Witch. Now, I don't know if this band is named after the Southern Appalachian folklore about the Bell Witch, or if they were King Diamond fans and they listened to the Merciful Fate release In the Shadows from 1992 and listened to the song Bell Witch and took that name. By the way, if you haven't listened to In the Shadows, what are you doing? It's one of the best albums of the 90s, one of the best Mercy records ever. Go out there and listen to it, please, and thank you. Not a bad song on that record. Bell Witch is a stoner doom sort of ambient metal from America. They're all about the low tunings and the low tempos and a lot of drone type stuff going through it. And honestly, I heard of this band through a friend, a few years ago. Basically, he has this hoodie with all these metal bands on it. And Bell Witch was on there. He likes Bell Witch. But these guys are really, really, really small time. As is a lot of the other bands. They're more current. They're a modern band. They really don't have a very huge audience. They're very underground. And I'm not really seeing them pick up steam from what I'm noticing. The reviews of their music really aren't always generally positive. And for that, I have to give Bell Witch a resounding F. The next band is Believer. And I believe I know nothing about them. So they're going straight into No Context. Yeah, guys, you really want to help me out with this because we're almost done with that 6th layer of No Context. I can't take anymore. All right, Benediction. This is a British extreme metal band, death metal band. This is where Barney Greenway of Napalm Death got his start. He left Benediction to go to Napalm Death. These guys are, very out there, very extreme. Their listener pool is, however, very small. They just didn't really make a lasting impression in the death metal community and extreme metal community. And it seems like now that their relevance has incredibly faded. The only thing that they have going for them is the fact that they helped spawn that British wave of extreme and death metal in the late 80s, early 90s, creating that proto-grindcore. So with Napalm Death, you also had Benediction spearheading that revolution. So I feel like for that alone, they deserve a little bit higher than an F. Which I almost put them in F, but they're like at the bottom of the D tier because lack of relevance really kills a band. But their contributions, along with Napalm Death, helped create that extreme metal movement at the end of the 80s, early 90s. Napalm Death is widely considered one of the forefathers of grindcore. Also Benediction for the same reasons because they played the same music. They just never received the same type of heights as Napalm Death. But because they helped forge that revolution, they had that push, and the rest of those bands, especially Napalm Death, were the accelerators for it and took it to new extremes. I don't feel like it's necessary to give them an F, but anything higher than a D is not fair either. Black Crown Initiate. I have no idea. All right, and what is this? This is Black Braid. I've got no idea. All right, that is going straight into No Context, starting our 7th row. All right. I can't read this either. Blood Incantation. Now, if it was just Incantation, I could probably tell you something about that band, but Blood Incantation, I don't really know much about. Blut aus Nord. That sounds incredibly German. Another German AF name, but unfortunately I don't know anything about them. So for that, they get an absolutely resounding No Context. All right, so the next band is a logo you'll probably recognize. This is Bolt Thrower. You want to talk about Benediction and the British wave of extreme and death metal. It doesn't get any more iconic and any more influential than Bolt Thrower. Honestly, these guys are no longer a thing, but as often as you see their logos, their banners, their music, you would think that they were still active and touring. These guys are widely considered one of the most influential and essential death metal bands. They formed in 1986 in Coventry. And you want to talk about spearheading that revolution of extreme metal. Them, along with Benediction, Napalm Death, and a couple others, they created that really, honestly, mainstream wave of extreme death metal and heavy music. These guys led the torch. They bridged the gap between hardcore, punk, and heavy metal music in the late mid-'80s. They're extreme, and honestly, their body of work still is active as it ever has been. They're incredibly popular, incredibly influential. Did they revolutionize death metal? No. But are they one of the most, honestly, active legacy bands out there that is still easily recognizable, influenced tons of folks? Yeah. But when you talk about S tier, these are guys that all started a revolution and created subgenres and things like that. While Bolt Thrower never did that, you want to talk about... Uh-oh, that was a mistake. You want to talk about being heavily influential. You want to talk about, just one of the most iconic bands of the time, and still to this day, young kids, new bands are finding influence in their music. It is just, without saying, Bolt Thrower is right at the top of the A tier. It's similar to the Atheist situation. There were other bands at the time that did more for revolutionizing extreme music and got to a more mainstream place with it and reached more people, but Bolt Thrower was right behind them. They're best in class. So it's very much like with Atheist. It's the same situation. Sort of like Teresis in the folk metal sort of aspect. These guys are almost S tier. If they had done a little more for the revolutionary side of heavy metal, pioneering new genres, these guys would have been an easy S, but it doesn't get any more mainstream. It doesn't get any more iconic than Bolt Thrower. Bork Nagar. I hope I'm saying that right. This is a black metal band. I forget where from. I think it's probably Norway or Sweden. You used to hear about this band a lot, and then you don't really hear about them nearly as much. But they're one of those bands that are consistent. The fans love them, and the critics pretty much do too. They consistently release good music. They're highly respected. Were they revolutionary? Not really. They're pretty much on the same kind of drill as 1349. Their significance is limited, especially here in America. Overseas, they're huge. As far as reinventing the wheel or revolutionizing metal music, or black metal in particular, they didn't quite do that. But they're absolute, stalwart of the genre. A lot of people look up to them. There are a D tier band, same as 1349 basically. It's the same kind of situation for a different band. You can trust these guys. If you're a fan of the music, you're always going to get great music out of them. They're just one of the most consistent and available bands. Brain Drill. I have no idea. Sounds like it hurts though. Goes straight into no context. This next band is one I haven't heard about in quite some time. This is Brujeria. This is hardcore music. This is a band that was once popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. This is also a Latin American sort of thing. There's a lot of cultural influence in the music. They did help revolutionize and spearhead what was hardcore music in the 90s. but they never really had lasting significance. Most reviews are generally good. The fans love them, but they never made a lasting impression or influence. So that being said, they get a D tier rating. All right. This next one is a delight. This is Burning Witches. This is all female power metal band, I think from Austria. I could be wrong. And they just recently hired a new guitarist, Courtney Cox from the Iron Maidens. I followed her for a long time. She seems like a great person and one hell of a guitar player. These ladies are on the path to great success. They've been nothing but significant since they were first noticed. They've done a lot for power metal, especially being an all-female power metal band. That's incredibly unique. Their fan base is only getting wider, and they're becoming more significant. They're getting big tours, big festivals. You hear about them in the U.S. They're breaking boundaries. They're a band on the rise, and honestly, they're super popular. So I'm going to put them at the very top of the C tier because I feel like in the next couple years, these ladies, with all their talent and ability, they're probably going to be an A tier band. And honestly, if they continue to revolutionize music in the way they have, especially being an all-female power metal band, I can see these ladies becoming an S in no time. It's good to see this. It's refreshing, and they're honestly, the music is incredible. Caligula's Horse. When you want to talk about niche sort of progressive metal bands, it doesn't get any more obscure than Caligula's Horse. This is an Australian progressive metal band. I don't know necessarily if they're still around, but you hear about them in certain circles. They're not extremely influential. They are big in Australia, but I'm hearing about them just now. I think their first album came out in 2017, if I recall correctly. Honestly, there's not much known, and they need to work, if they're still together, they need to work on availability and accessibility. So I'm going to give them a bottom of the D tier rating because we are starting to hear about them more. There's just not enough substance there. They need to work on availability and accessibility, and they really need to gain a stronger foothold globally. But that being said, they are a respected and well-earned D-tier band. All right, guys and girls, and that is it for me. We have conquered yet again another video in the Tiermaker saga. And guys, please don't forget there's a playlist for all these incredible Tiermaker videos. If you missed it when it came out, just click on it and it'll be there. If you're new to the saga, start from the beginning so that way everything makes sense. Again, I appreciate everybody's input. I would love to hear more conversation on some of these artists or on these videos in general. And as always, if you enjoy this content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more. Guys, any information on any of those obscure to me or obscure bands that you have, please comment them below because I eventually want to, after all this is done, have this list finished and everybody in their rightful places according to factual significance. Or just tell me how you feel about these bands in general or any of them. I love hearing your guys' feedback, and I will see you again next week. See you later.